In this daily drop, it's some big camera changes for the channel and the C47 as a whole, so let's go. Okay, everybody, moving along this week and some stuff to talk about. I alluded to not that long ago that I was considering some new cameras for the C47. And most of you know that my day job is not the daily drop. It might be fun if it was, but what I do for a living is video production. And it's time for me to really consider, in fact, I have considered and decided upon new camera systems for my work. That will also affect the cameras that I'm using for the daily drop and the things for this channel. So let's get into it right now. First and foremost, I want to thank the supporters and sponsors of this channel, and specifically in this case, B&H, because they have been amazing in terms of supporting what I do here. There's no financial exchange that happens with B&H, but they do support the channel so that I have access to equipment so I can talk about and show you that equipment, use it in videos, and cameras are included in that. And that means that this little guy right here, the FX30, not the Sigma 18-50 lens, but the camera body, and the camera that's right behind there, the Sony A7C Mark II, are going back. They're going back to B&H, and that's okay. I have gotten so much out of these cameras, and they have really allowed me to do this series. And I've also taken them out, as you know, on jobs and used them, and I think that they are great. Now, they match very well with each other. And this is not the end of the line for the FX30 for me personally. I have found that having a camera this small with this type of combination with the 18-50 Sigma lens is something that really fits me in certain situations and certain types of production. So unless at BSC Expo in February or at NAB in April, there's a big change. I think it's pretty much a given for me that I'm going to be picking up one of these FX30s, especially when Sony does that sale where they take $200 off and you're getting it for under $1,600 US. Bar none at the moment for a camera like this, probably a great, maybe the best entry point into having a little digital cinema camera, built-in fan, same body style as the FX3. It is Super 35, which I have no problem with. And there you have it. All right, so these are going away. So what is it that I'm going to be replacing them with? Well, it's kind of a tricky answer. I'm going to dip to black and we'll talk about that. Okay, drum roll, please. Actually, it's kind of not really a drum roll because what I'm going to talk about is an interim step, because what I'm going to be doing in the near future is producing some new content for Canon. And right now for that content, I'm going to be using this camera right here, which is the Cinema EOS C70. So this camera has been on the market, I believe, since, is it actually 2020? Maybe 2021. It's been around for a while. It's a workhorse of a camera, and the body style is very similar to what will become the B camera that I will be getting, which is the C80. Obviously, that's a full frame camera, 6K, but very similar in size. The lens that I have on here, though, is one of the lenses that I will be getting, which is the 24-70. I was kind of torn between this lens and the 24-105 because it has more reach, but it's also a bigger lens, meaning longer. It's almost a pound heavier than the 24-70, and the other lens that I'm going to be getting sort of for day in, day out production is going to be the 70-200. That will be the longer lens that's very similar to 24-105, but it actually weighs a little bit less. And if you compare that lens with the other 70 to 200 that Canon has in the RF mount, the difference in weight is actually not that much. So this lens right here, we'll talk about this a lot more in the future, will actually be the A camera lens, which will be sitting on a C400. The C80 will be the B camera and probably will have the 70 to 200 on it most of the time. So yeah, so right now, I think what I'm going to do is officially take this A7C2 now away so that this FX30 and that camera can go back to B&H. And then I'm going to, at least for the rest of this episode, switch this out, and we'll end off on the C70 with the 24 to 70 millimeter lens. Okay, here we are with the C70, and I will say right off the bat that the first thing that took me the most amount of time was dialing in the audio, and it's not quite there right now, but getting the audio coming out of the MixPre 6.2 over the 1/8" cable into the camera, the C70, and getting those levels to be basically where they need to be, that was the thing that I spent the most amount of time on, not setting up the camera in terms of how it's capturing picture. And the biggest thing was the output from the MixPre 6.2 had to be considerably lower than it was feeding to the Sony camera. So I was at a minus 18 dB with that stereo out to the Sony camera, either the FX30 or A7C2, but for the C70, minus 38. So a big difference in terms of that before it sort of, you know, they married with each other and they were working together well. And that's just the way it is when you're working with new cameras. You have to learn with all of your equipment how it works together. And then once you do, you're off to the races. And of course, the big difference is the image itself that's being captured. We're on a Canon camera as opposed to a Sony camera. For the Sony camera, I was using PP11, which is a Cinetone preset. And on this camera for now, and I'm going to play around with it and figure out where I settle, I'm just using Custom Picture 1, which is essentially BT709 in terms of chroma capture, and then YDR in terms of just a slightly wider than 709 luminance capture. So, you know, protects highlights a little bit better, so on and so forth. And it doesn't make sense for me in this controlled environment with any of these cameras to be shooting personally in log, going through all of that workflow in post-production for the daily drop. Not really. For client-based projects, sure, but you'll see that the difference, at least to my eye, is very noticeable, not just in terms of how it's capturing and sort of has that look in terms of color, but the shirt. The Cinetone profile on the FX30 and the A7C2 definitely is a little more contrasty and sharper. And I'm not talking about my eyes being in focus, because both of the cameras can handle that. The shirt actually, with this camera, seems a little bit more true to life in some ways, if that makes sense. Doesn't mean that it's a better image. It doesn't mean it's the image that you want to capture, but just scrub back to the first two parts of the video and you can, or the middle one, the second one, and compare it to this, and you'll definitely see a difference in the image. I've got a lot of tweaking to do here, and as I said, that FX30 is coming back unless something major gets announced in the next few weeks. You buy the camera you need for the work you're doing now, and that's exciting. So there you go. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and this will all get dialed in over time. Don't forget to, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Daily Drop.